On the morning of November 3, 2022, a construction crew breaking ground for a new luxury resort 40 kilometers outside Dubai made a discovery that would unravel a story of passion, betrayal, and deadly revenge. Buried in a shallow grave beneath the desert sand, wrapped in expensive bed linens from the Armani Hotel, lay the body of 32-year-old Filipina elementary school teacher Christina Mae Rosales. She'd been dead for 6 days. Cause of death: manual strangulation followed by multiple stab wounds, 17 in total, concentrated around the chest and abdomen. The medical examiner would later describe it as a crime of intense personal rage, suggesting the killer knew the victim intimately and wanted her to suffer. But the most chilling detail emerged during autopsy. Christina had been 5 weeks pregnant when she died. DNA testing would later confirm the unborn child's father wasn't Christina's legal husband, Marco Rosales, a 35-year-old automotive technician working in Sharjah. The father was Sheikh Tariq Al-Nahyan, a 42-year-old real estate heir worth $450 million who'd been conducting a secret affair with Christina for 8 months. The investigation would reveal a triangle of deception so complex that determining who actually killed Christina required unraveling lies layered upon lies. Was it Marco, the betrayed husband who discovered his wife's infidelity and her pregnancy with another man's child? Or was it Sheikh Tariq, the wealthy lover who faced social ruin if the affair became public? Or could it have been someone else entirely? A hired killer, a jealous rival, a family member protecting reputation? Before we dive into this twisted tale of forbidden love and fatal consequences, hit that subscribe button, because this case will challenge everything you think you know about victims, villains, and the lies people tell themselves to justify murder. The truth, when finally revealed, would prove more disturbing than anyone imagined. Sometimes there's more than one killer. Sometimes betrayal creates a chain reaction of violence where multiple people bear guilt for a single death. Christina Rosales's murder wasn't an isolated incident. It represented a dangerous pattern playing out across the Gulf states, where hundreds of thousands of Filipino workers navigate complex social dynamics, economic pressures, and the particular vulnerabilities of life lived far from home and family. The statistics paint a sobering picture. Over 900,000 Filipinos work in the UAE, with women comprising roughly 58% of that workforce. Of those women, approximately 40% work in education, healthcare, hospitality, and domestic service, sectors that often bring them into close proximity with wealthy local families. Affairs between Filipino workers and Arab men happen more frequently than official statistics acknowledge. Most remain secret, ending quietly when contracts expire or transfers occur. But some explode into violence when pregnancy, discovery, or demands for legitimacy threaten the careful boundaries that make such relationships possible. Drop a comment below. Is an affair ever truly consensual when one person has all the power, wealth, citizenship, legal protections, and the other has none? Where's the line between affair and exploitation? Between 2018 and 2023, Philippine Embassy records document at least 34 Filipino women killed by current or former intimate partners in the UAE. Of those cases, 19 involved relationships with Emirati or other Gulf national men where power imbalances were extreme. Only 11 cases resulted in criminal convictions. The rest were classified as domestic disputes, accidents, or remain unsolved. Christina's case gained international attention because of its complexity. A love triangle involving a Filipino married couple and a wealthy sheikh, with enough suspects and motives to fuel multiple theories. The investigation would ultimately reveal that determining legal guilt mattered less than understanding how systems of power, migration, and desperation create circumstances where murder becomes almost inevitable. Christina Mae Rosales was born on May 15, 1990 in Pampanga Province, Philippines, the central Luzon region known for producing educators, nurses, and overseas workers at rates higher than the national average. Her father, Marco Rosales, worked as a security guard at Clark Freeport Zone, earning 12,000 pesos monthly, $220. Her mother, Angelina, operated a small sari-sari store, neighborhood convenience shop from their home's front window, adding another 8,000 pesos, $145 in good months. Despite financial constraints, Christina excelled academically. She graduated valedictorian from Pampanga National High School in 2007, earned a full scholarship to Philippine Normal University, the country's premier teacher education institution, and obtained her Bachelor of Elementary Education degree with honors in 2011. She passed the licensure examination for teachers on her first attempt, a significant achievement given the 30% pass rate, and began teaching third grade at a public elementary school in Angel City, earning 18,000 pesos monthly, $330. It was honest, meaningful work, but the mathematics of poverty were unforgiving. Her salary barely covered rent, transportation, and basic necessities, leaving almost nothing to send home to parents who'd sacrificed for her education. If Christina's story sounds familiar, smash that like button, because it's the story of millions of Filipino professionals trapped between passion for their work and crushing economic reality. In 2014, at age 24, Christina married Marco Rosales, her college boyfriend who'd become an automotive technician. Marco was solid, reliable, and unambitious in ways that felt safe after Christina's childhood of constant financial stress. He didn't drink excessively, didn't gamble, showed up for work consistently. In Philippine working-class culture, these qualities define a good man regardless of romantic chemistry. Their marriage was practical rather than passionate. They shared a 300-square-foot apartment in Angel City, split expenses, and lived parallel lives that occasionally intersected for obligatory family events and weekend routines. They talked about children, eventually, but neither seemed eager to add financial pressure to their already tight budget. By 2018, Christina was 28 years old, professionally competent but financially stagnant, married but emotionally unfulfilled. She'd been teaching for 7 years at the same school, watching younger teachers cycle through positions while she remained because stability mattered more than growth. And then she saw the recruitment advertisement that would change everything. Elementary teachers needed, international school, Dubai, salary, $3,500 USD monthly plus housing plus benefits, 2-year contract, apply now. $3,500 monthly was more than 10 times her Philippine teaching salary. It was transformative money, enough to send substantial remittances home, save for her parents' retirement, fund her siblings' education, and perhaps finally achieve the financial security her entire adult life had lacked. Marco encouraged her to apply. His automotive work was steady but low-paid. Christina's Dubai salary would dwarf his earnings. They agreed she'd work the 2-year contract, send money home, and return to build their future together with significant savings. Christina was hired by Dubai Pearl International School in March 2019. She arrived in Dubai on August 15, 2019, at age 29, full of hope, determination, and naive belief that distance would preserve her marriage through video calls and annual visits. She had no idea that within 3 years she'd be dead, murdered for loving the wrong man while still married to another. Marco Rosales was, by all accounts, exactly what he appeared to be. An ordinary working-class Filipino man with limited education, honest work ethic, and traditional values about marriage, masculinity, and family. Born in 1987 in Tarlac Province to a farming family, Marco had completed only 2 years of automotive technical college before financial constraints forced him into immediate employment. He worked as a mechanic's apprentice, then as a full technician, earning enough to live modestly but never enough to feel financially secure. His marriage to Christina in 2014 had been, for him, a significant achievement. Christina was educated pretty from a slightly better-off family. Marco felt he'd married up and was determined to be a good husband as he understood it, faithful, employed, non-abusive. But Marco's emotional intelligence was limited. He didn't understand Christina's intellectual needs, her professional frustrations, her desire for conversation beyond daily logistics. He watched basketball and action movies. She read novels and educational journals. He was content with routine. She craved growth. Their marriage wasn't unhappy. It was simply blank, an arrangement of shared space and split bills with minimal emotional intimacy. Subscribe if you're already seeing how this marriage was vulnerable long before Christina left for Dubai. Because emotional disconnection creates the conditions for affairs, even when both partners are technically faithful. When Christina left for Dubai in 2019, Marco initially felt proud. His wife's international contract elevated his social status among friends and family. He'd become an OFW husband, a recognized role in Philippine culture where men manage households while wives work abroad. For the first year, their arrangement functioned adequately. Christina sent $2,000 monthly, keeping $1,500 for savings and expenses, video called twice weekly, and returned for a 3-week vacation in December 2019. The visit was cordial but not passionate, more like roommates reuniting than spouses in love. Marco noticed Christina seemed different, more confident, more articulate, wearing better clothes and makeup. She talked about Dubai's luxury, her multinational colleagues, cultural experiences he couldn't relate to. The gap between their worlds was widening, but Marco attributed it to normal adjustment to international work. He didn't suspect infidelity because the possibility seemed absurd. Christina was religious, traditional, faithful. Affairs happened to other people, not to them. The pandemic complicated everything. Christina's scheduled vacation in 2020 was canceled due to travel restrictions. Video calls became less frequent. Christina claimed exhaustion from online teaching demands. When they did speak, conversations felt strained, obligatory. By 2021, Marco's pride had curdled into resentment. Christina's remittances continued, but her emotional presence had evaporated. Friends made jokes about Dubai wives who forgot their husbands. Family members asked uncomfortable questions about when Christina would return permanently. Marco's masculinity, constructed around being a provider and husband, was being undermined by a wife who no longer needed him financially or seemed to want him emotionally. Comment below, was Marco a victim of Christina's betrayal, or was he simply an incompatible partner she'd outgrown? Can both things be true simultaneously? In March 2022, Marco's suspicions crystallized into certainty through the modern tool of betrayal discovery: social media. A mutual friend sent Marco screenshots from Christina's Instagram, photos she'd posted then quickly deleted showing her at luxury restaurants, on yacht trips, at beach resorts, always carefully cropped to avoid showing companions, but clearly not the lifestyle of a teacher living on $3,500 monthly. Marco created a fake Instagram account and began monitoring Christina's social media obsessively. He noticed patterns. She posted about girls' nights and teacher outings, but her tagged locations were places like Atlantis the Palm, Burj Al Arab, and Jumeirah Beach Hotel, venues that cost more than her monthly salary. In July 2022, Marco found the smoking gun, a video Christina had been tagged in by a colleague, showing a group dinner where Christina sat next to an Arab man in traditional dress, laughing at something he'd said, their body language suggesting intimacy beyond casual acquaintance. Marco confronted Christina via video call. She denied everything, claimed the man was a student's father who'd hosted a teacher appreciation dinner. Marco didn't believe her but had no concrete proof beyond suspicions and screenshots. He made a decision that would eventually lead to murder. He would fly to Dubai unannounced and discover the truth himself. Sheikh Tariq Al-Nahyan came from a branch of the ruling family's extended network, not immediate royalty, but close enough to carry the title and the privileges it conferred. His grandfather had been a minor government official in the 1960s. His father had parlayed those connections into real estate holdings that appreciated exponentially during Dubai's construction boom. By age 42 in 2022, Tariq controlled a portfolio worth $450 million, including residential buildings, commercial properties, and luxury villa developments. He'd never worked in the conventional sense. His work consisted of attending investment meetings, approving property manager decisions, and maintaining the social relationships that enabled his wealth. Tariq had been married once, briefly, in his 20s, an arranged marriage that ended in divorce after 3 years when his wife tired of his affairs and emotional unavailability. He had no children, which was considered unusual and slightly shameful in Emirati culture where family legacy and offspring define masculine success. His romantic life consisted primarily of transactional encounters, expensive escorts, brief affairs with foreign women passing through Dubai, relationships predicated on his wealth and ending when women demanded more than he was willing to provide. Hit that like button if you're recognizing a pattern. Men with unlimited money but limited emotional capacity, treating relationships as transactions they can control. Tariq met Christina in February 2022 at Dubai Pearl International School, where his company owned the building, and he occasionally visited to discuss facilities management with administrators. He noticed her immediately, a pretty Filipina teacher with intelligent eyes and genuine warmth, so different from the transactional women he usually encountered. He engineered a conversation about educational philosophy, was impressed by her articulate responses, and asked if she'd be willing to consult on educational programming for a youth center he was planning. It was a lie. There was no youth center, but it gave him a pretext to obtain her phone number. Their affair began slowly, almost innocently. Coffee meetings to discuss the youth center project became lunches, then dinners. Tariq was charming, attentive, and careful. He knew Christina was married and understood that moral conflict made her vulnerable and controllable. He positioned himself as her intellectual equal and emotional confidant, something Marco had never been. He asked about her teaching philosophy, her childhood dreams, her favorite books. He made her feel seen in ways her marriage never had. Share this video if you've ever watched someone fall for emotional manipulation disguised as genuine interest, because Tariq's seduction playbook is textbook predatory behavior. By April 2022, their relationship had become physical. Tariq rented a luxury apartment in Dubai Marina specifically for their encounters, a $4,500 monthly expense that was insignificant to his wealth but symbolized enormous investment to Christina. For Christina, the affair represented everything her marriage lacked: passion, intellectual stimulation, excitement, and the intoxicating experience of being desired by a powerful man. Tariq was attentive, generous, and made her feel sophisticated rather than provincial. For Tariq, Christina represented a fantasy, the educated, cultured foreign woman who chose him for supposedly more than money, even though money made the entire affair possible, who didn't demand marriage or legitimacy, who existed in a compartmentalized space separate from his public life. The affair was built on mutual self-deception. Christina convinced herself that Tariq's attention was genuine affection rather than the temporary fascination of a wealthy man with endless options. Tariq convinced himself he was different from other men who exploited vulnerable foreign workers, that his affair was real despite his refusal to make it public or legitimate. By August 2022, Christina was pregnant, and everything that had been possible in the realm of fantasy became impossible in the realm of consequences. Christina discovered she was pregnant in late September 2022. She'd missed her period by 3 weeks, felt nauseous during morning classes, and finally purchased a pregnancy test from a pharmacy in Karama, taking it in the cramped staff bathroom at Dubai Pearl International School between class periods. 2 lines unmistakably positive. Her first thought, according to text messages recovered later by investigators, was panic. "Oh God, what have I done? What am I going to do?" The pregnancy created multiple impossible problems. Problem 1, paternity ambiguity. Christina hadn't been intimate with Marco during her December 2021 vacation home. They'd slept in separate beds, claiming Marco had a back injury requiring firm support. The child was definitely Tariq's, but proving that required either confession or DNA testing, both options carrying enormous risks. Problem 2, legal jeopardy. Under UAE law, extramarital pregnancy is criminal, carrying potential imprisonment and deportation. Even though enforcement had become less aggressive in recent years, Christina's visa status made her vulnerable to legal consequences if authorities became aware. Problem 3, Tariq's reaction. Christina had no idea how Tariq would respond. Would he want the child? Would he demand she terminate? Would he abandon her entirely? Problem 4, Marco's inevitable discovery. Christina hadn't seen Marco in nearly a year. If she returned to the Philippines pregnant, basic timeline math would expose the affair immediately. Subscribe if you're feeling the walls closing in, because Christina's options were all bad, and she was about to choose the worst possible path. Christina told Tariq about the pregnancy on October 2, 2022, during a meeting at their Dubai Marina apartment. His reaction was immediate and unambiguous. "You need to handle this. I can't be connected to this situation." Handle this was euphemism for abortion. Tariq offered to pay all expenses, arrange a private clinic in Abu Dhabi where discretion was assured, and provide recovery time in the apartment. What he wouldn't offer, acknowledgement, support, or any future relationship. The pregnancy had transformed Christina from fantasy girlfriend to problem requiring solution. Tariq's true character emerged with brutal clarity. He was exactly like every other wealthy man who viewed foreign women as temporary entertainment until consequences demanded accountability. Christina was devastated but not entirely surprised. On some level, she'd always known Tariq's limitations, but pregnancy creates emotional conditions that make rational decisions almost impossible. She convinced herself she could change his mind if she just gave him time to adjust to the idea. She declined the immediate abortion, saying she needed time to think. This decision enraged Tariq, who understood that every week of pregnancy increased risks of discovery, social scandal, and legal complications. Meanwhile, Marco Rosales was boarding a flight to Dubai, armed with suspicions and determined to confront his wife about the lifestyle her social media had inadvertently revealed. Three people were about to converge in a collision that would end in murder. Marco Rosales arrived in Dubai on October 24, 2022, on a tourist visa obtained through a travel agency in Manila. He'd borrowed money for the ticket, telling family he wanted to surprise Christina for their anniversary, which wasn't for another 3 months, but his family didn't question it. He didn't tell Christina he was coming. He checked into a budget hotel in Dera, paid $25 nightly, and began surveillance of his own wife like a private investigator in a noir film. Marco's technical skills as an automotive mechanic didn't translate to sophisticated spycraft, but desperation made him resourceful. He stationed himself outside Dubai Pearl International School at dismissal time, watching Christina leave with colleagues. He followed her on the metro to Dubai Marina, a neighborhood far from her shared teacher accommodation in Bur Dubai, and watched her enter a luxury residential tower he could never afford. Comment below, was Marco's surveillance justified given his suspicions, or was it a violation of Christina's privacy even if she was guilty of affair? Where's the ethical line? Marco waited 4 hours. At 9:30 p.m., he watched Christina exit the building with an Arab man in traditional white Kanjura and Gutra, clearly wealthy based on the Mercedes S-Class sedan, $120,000 that pulled up within moments. They kissed before she got in the car. Not a friendly peck, a lover's kiss, unambiguous and devastating. Marco's world shattered in that moment. All his suspicions confirmed, all his masculine identity undermined, all the jokes from friends about Dubai wives suddenly cruelly accurate. He followed them, his taxi trailing their Mercedes, to Christina's actual accommodation in Bur Dubai. He watched Tariq drop her off, watched another kiss, watched his wife disappear into an apartment building while another man drove away. Marco sat in that taxi for 3 hours, processing betrayal, humiliation, and rage. The taxi driver, a Pakistani immigrant who'd seen this scenario play out many times, offered sympathetic silence and didn't run the meter. At 12:45 a.m. on October 25, Marco knocked on Christina's door. What happened in the early morning hours of October 28, 2022, not October 25, Marco spent 3 days confronting Christina before violence occurred, would eventually be reconstructed through forensic evidence, cell phone records, and partial confessions from both men. The first confrontation, October 25, 12:45 a.m. Christina opened her apartment door to find Marco standing in the hallway, impossible, terrifying reality crashing into her carefully compartmentalized life. Their confrontation lasted hours. Marco demanded truth. Christina initially denied everything, then admitted friendship with Tariq, then finally confessed the sexual relationship under Marco's relentless questioning. Marco asked the question that shattered what remained. Are you pregnant? Christina's silence was confirmation. Marco demanded to know if the child was his. Christina couldn't lie anymore. She admitted the pregnancy, admitted the paternity, admitted the entire 8-month affair. Marco's reaction wasn't immediate violence. It was something colder and more dangerous, calculating rage. He told Christina he needed time to think, left the apartment, and disappeared into Dubai's night. The conspiracy, October 25-27. Over the next 3 days, both Marco and Tariq independently began planning Christina's murder, unaware they were moving toward the same terrible conclusion. Marco's planning was crude but determined. He researched desert locations where bodies might never be found. He purchased a hunting knife from a sporting goods store in Sharjah, $45. He rented a car using his tourist visa documentation, $180 for 3 days. He convinced himself that Christina had destroyed their marriage, humiliated him publicly, and deserved punishment. Share this video if you believe Marco's betrayal didn't justify murder, because feeling victimized doesn't give anyone the right to become a killer. Simultaneously, Tariq was planning his own solution. Christina had texted him that Marco knew everything, creating exactly the nightmare scenario Tariq feared, potential public exposure. His initial plan was to pay Marco off, offer money in exchange for silence and divorce. But when he researched Marco's background and realized this was a working-class man with limited education, Tariq's classism suggested a different solution: elimination. Tariq contacted a business associate with criminal connections, specifically a Pakistani national working in construction who'd previously handled discrete problems for wealthy clients. The code language was clear: make the problem disappear. The payment, $30,000 USD wired to an offshore account. But before Tariq's hired solution could be implemented, Marco acted. On October 28, Marco returned to Christina's apartment at 2:00 a.m., claiming he wanted to talk rationally about next steps. Christina, desperate to manage the catastrophe, allowed him inside. Security footage shows Marco entering at 2:08 a.m. He didn't leave until 4:47 a.m., nearly 3 hours later. What happened inside was reconstructed through forensic evidence and Marco's eventual partial confession. Marco confronted Christina again, demanding she terminate the pregnancy immediately and return to the Philippines with him to fix their marriage. Christina refused, saying she couldn't go back to their old life, that the marriage was over, that she was keeping the baby regardless of Tariq's involvement. Her refusal, her assertion of autonomy, her rejection of Marco's authority to dictate her choices, triggered the violence Marco had been containing for 3 days. He attacked her with the knife he'd purchased, stabbing her repeatedly in a frenzy of rage that the medical examiner would describe as overkill, suggesting extreme emotional investment in the victim's death. But Christina didn't die immediately from the stab wounds. Marco, realizing what he'd done and panicking, strangled her manually to end her suffering, though investigators believe the strangulation was more about ensuring death than mercy. Marco wrapped Christina's body in bed linens, carried her to his rental car at 4:30 a.m. Security footage captured this, though the wrapped bundle wasn't immediately identified as a body, and drove into the desert. He buried her in a shallow grave 40 kilometers outside Dubai, near the construction site that would eventually expose her body. He returned the rental car, washed blood from his clothes in his hotel bathroom, and booked a flight back to Manila departing October 29. Marco had committed murder, but the story doesn't end there. Tariq's hired assassin arrived at Christina's apartment on October 29, 1 day after Marco's murder, to find the door unlocked and the apartment empty except for blood evidence that cleaning attempts had failed to fully remove. The assassin reported back to Tariq that the situation had already been handled by someone else. Tariq initially felt relief, problem solved without direct involvement, but quickly realized that whoever killed Christina represented a loose end that could eventually expose his affair. Subscribe if you're seeing how this case defies simple victim-villain narratives, because sometimes multiple guilty parties create impossible legal situations. Under UAE criminal law, Tariq's conspiracy to murder, even though the actual murder was committed by someone else before his hired killer arrived, still constituted criminal culpability. The fact that he'd paid for murder and arranged the logistics meant he was legally guilty even though his killer never touched Christina. The investigation would eventually charge both men. Christina's body was discovered on November 3, 2022, by construction workers. Identification took 3 days. Dental records matched to her employment documentation at Dubai Pearl International School. Dubai police immediately investigated her workplace and accommodation. The blood evidence in her apartment, the security footage showing Marco's visit and his removal of a large wrapped bundle, and Christina's phone records, showing desperate texts to Tariq about Marco knowing everything, provided investigative roadmap. Marco was arrested at Manila's Nin Aquino International Airport on November 8, 2022, attempting to board a flight to Saudi Arabia using fraudulent documents. Philippine authorities, responding to Interpol warrant issued by Dubai police, took him into custody. During interrogation, Marco initially denied everything, then claimed self-defense, contradicted by forensic evidence showing Christina had been attacked from behind, and finally admitted to the killing while justifying it as a crime of passion provoked by Christina's betrayal and pregnancy. Drop a comment. Does betrayal ever constitute provocation that reduces a killer's guilt? Or is murder always murder regardless of emotional context? Tariq was arrested on November 10, 2022, at his Emirates Hills mansion after investigators traced financial records showing the $30,000 wire transfer to the Pakistani associate. Under interrogation, he admitted arranging Christina's murder, but claimed he'd canceled the arrangement before it could be executed. Evidence contradicted this. The cancellation message was sent after Marco's arrest made news, not before. The Pakistani hired assassin was arrested November 12, attempting to leave Dubai through Abu Dhabi airport. He cooperated fully with investigators in exchange for reduced charges, providing detailed testimony about Tariq's instructions, payment, and timeline. The investigation revealed an extraordinary scenario: two separate murder plots converging on the same victim, with one succeeding before the other could be implemented. Both men were guilty, one of actual murder, one of conspiracy to murder, even though only one man had physically killed Christina. The legal proceedings split into two parallel cases. Marco Rosales tried in absentia in Dubai. He fought extradition from the Philippines. And Sheikh Tariq Al-Nahyan tried in Dubai criminal court for conspiracy to commit murder. Marco's trial, February-April 2023. The Philippine government initially resisted extradition, citing Marco as a Filipino citizen who'd been provoked by his wife's adultery, a defense that sparked furious debate about victim blaming and whether betrayed spouses have reduced culpability for revenge murders. Share this video if you believe Marco's extradition should have been automatic, because geography doesn't determine whether murder is murder. Dubai courts tried Marco in absentia after extradition appeals exhausted. The evidence was overwhelming: security footage, forensic evidence, his own partial confession to Philippine authorities. He was convicted of first-degree premeditated murder in April 2023 and sentenced to life imprisonment, 25 years minimum, with permanent deportation upon release. Marco remained in Philippine custody pending extradition appeals that continue as of 2024. Tariq's case was more complex. His defense argued that mere discussion of murder without actual execution shouldn't constitute criminal liability, that he'd changed his mind before any violence occurred, contradicted by evidence, and that his wealth and social standing should be considered as factors indicating he wasn't a flight risk or danger to society. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: financial records, testimony from the hired assassin, text messages between Tariq and Christina showing his demands that she handle the pregnancy situation, and expert testimony explaining that conspiracy to murder doesn't require successful execution to constitute criminal offense. Most damningly, prosecutors revealed that Tariq had searched online for how to dispose of body in desert and UAE murder investigation procedures, searches indicating he'd been researching cover-up strategies even before hiring the assassin. The three-judge panel deliberated for 5 days before delivering verdict on March 15, 2023. Sentencing came 2 weeks later: 15 years imprisonment with possibility of parole after 10 years, plus $500,000 fine payable to Christina's family as blood money compensation under Islamic legal principles. Comment below: is 15 years adequate punishment for paying $30,000 to have someone murdered? Should conspiracy carry the same sentence as actual murder? The ripple effects of Christina's murder destroyed multiple families across continents. For Christina's family in Pampanga, her parents, Roberto and Angelina, received Christina's body in December 2022. The funeral was attended by hundreds: former students, teaching colleagues, community members who'd watched Christina rise from poverty to professional success only to die at 32. Her mother told journalists, My daughter went to Dubai to help us. She sent money every month. She was a good girl. I don't understand what happened. I don't understand why she had to die. The family received $500,000 from Tariq's blood money payment. They used part to build a modest house and part to establish a scholarship fund at Christina's alma mater. But Angelina developed severe depression and died by suicide in August 2023, unable to process her daughter's death. Friends said she blamed herself for encouraging Christina to work abroad. For Marco's family, Marco's parents and siblings faced social ostracization in their Tarlac community. Neighbors viewed Marco as a murderer regardless of provocation, and his family as tainted by association. His parents lost their modest home when they used it as collateral for legal fees they couldn't ultimately afford. Marco remains in Philippine custody as of 2024, fighting extradition while serving a reduced Philippine sentence for related documentation fraud charges. For Tariq's family, the scandal destroyed Tariq's business reputation and social standing. His company lost multiple contracts when clients distanced themselves from the murder conspiracy headlines. His extended family publicly disowned him to protect their own reputations. He serves his sentence in Al-Awir Central Prison, eligible for parole in 2033 at age 53. For the broader Filipino community in UAE, Christina's case became a cautionary tale about the specific vulnerabilities of extramarital relationships, the dangers of affairs with powerful locals, and the importance of maintaining strong support networks that might intervene before situations become deadly. Worker advocacy organizations used Christina's case to push for stronger legal protections for foreign workers in domestic disputes and better embassy support for workers in complicated relationships. Subscribe and share if you believe Christina's story represents thousands of Filipino workers navigating impossible situations with inadequate support systems. Christina Mae Rosales' story resists simple moral conclusions because all three primary figures, victim, husband, lover, made catastrophic choices that converged into tragedy. Was Christina culpable? Yes and no. She betrayed her marriage vows, conducted an affair while legally married, and became pregnant by her lover while still bound to her husband. These were choices with foreseeable consequences. But she was also a woman in an emotionally dead marriage, economically trapped by migration circumstances, vulnerable to a wealthy man's manipulations, and ultimately denied agency over her own reproductive choices by both men who claimed to love her. Was Marco justified? Absolutely not in his violence, but perhaps understandable in his devastation. Discovering your spouse's affair and pregnancy with another man's child is traumatic betrayal. But betrayal doesn't authorize murder. Marco had options: divorce, returning to Philippines, even pursuing civil criminal charges against Christina for adultery. He chose murder because his sense of masculine honor couldn't tolerate being the cuckolded husband. His ego was more important than Christina's life. Was Tariq the true villain? In many ways, yes. He initiated the affair knowing Christina was married and vulnerable. He pressured her to abort when pregnancy disrupted his comfortable fantasy. He arranged her murder when she became inconvenient. His wealth enabled every step. Yet legally, he's serving less time than Marco because he didn't personally kill Christina, just paid for someone else to do it. Hit that like button if you're frustrated by how wealth consistently reduces consequences for criminal behavior.